Hello, friends. Welcome to On the CQ. This week's knowledge drop is by Mary Choi Kelly, leadership expert and independent consultant with Heritage Consulting by B+R. Mary will be sharing best practices on the hot topic of diversity and inclusion. Welcome, Mary. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Mary Choi Kelly, and I'm a consultant with Heritage Consulting by B+R. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of On the CQ. Today, I'd like to share some of the lessons I've learned working with senior executives on the topic of diversity strategy. Over the last 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with leaders across global organizations and diverse industries. And each of these organizations have been a little frustrated and disappointed in the results and outcomes that they've been able to achieve as it relates to diversity. Based on these experiences, I have a few insights that I'd like to share. The first one is that you should always challenge the assumptions and perceptions around diversity. When I first raised the topic of diversity to senior leaders, I was often confronted with a very similar response. And it was, Mary, we've tried. We've tried to hire diverse leaders, but they just don't exist in X industry. Insert the name of the industry. And being new to the industry, I would be a little confused, but also wanted to know if that was the case. So I went straight to the data and facts. So I'd look at the recruiting results for the organization and found that the organization was doing a very good job and were very successfully recruiting and hiring diverse leaders into the organization. So recruiting wasn't the problem. What was the problem? I then looked at turnover and found that on an annual basis, the same number of people that were being recruited or more were leaving the organization. So if the same number of people that were being recruited or more were leaving, then it's no surprise to me that the senior leaders did not see the results of their diversity efforts. So the first lesson to be learned is you need to understand what problem you're really trying to solve. In this case, it wasn't a recruiting issue, it was a retention issue. And every diversity strategy needs to include both recruiting and retention to be effective. The second lesson learned is that it's easy and quick for us to focus on diversity at the most senior levels of the organization, and that is very important. However, for an effective diversity strategy, we have to look at the level of diversity in our frontline manager roles. Most organizations are actually quite diverse overall, but what happens is there's a significant drop-off of diversity at that frontline leadership level. And every subsequent level above that, the percentages drop. So no matter how much you do to improve the hiring and promotion into senior levels into the organization, you will never catch up or get ahead if the diversity of the frontline leaders is lacking. So I would suggest that every diversity strategy include the pipeline and hire and promote and develop leaders into the frontline manager roles. Third, and finally, diversity as a topic can be very overwhelming. Most organizations know that there's a big gap between where they are today compared to where they want to go. It's also a long-term strategy. It's not something that's going to change overnight. And it also requires a comprehensive approach. And I'm the first to advocate that an effective, sustainable diversity strategy needs to be long-term focused, comprehensive, and there needs to be a clear vision from where you are today to where you want to go. However, if leaders are overwhelmed, they often get paralyzed and don't know what to do or where to start and therefore do nothing. And that's just human nature. So I'm going to propose something a little provocative. To make the greatest impact on your diversity strategy for your organization, I would suggest that every leader in the organization has within their own control the ability to drive positive change in this area. with no budget, and they can do it immediately. So what is that? I'm going to tell you. If every leader were to make a list of the diverse employees within their team, their department, sphere of influence, start with that list. Then identify what are the small actions that they can take that would have a huge impact on each one of those individuals. I call those small actions with a huge impact defining moments. So my call to action to you is this. If you would start by making a list of every diverse leader within your organization, your team, your department, your sphere of influence, and identify the small personal actions that you can take to make a huge impact. Start creating defining moments for employees within your organization. This is the start of culture change. This is the start of implementing a diversity strategy. And this, I guarantee, will have huge positive impacts on your overall goals to create a more diverse organization. So I invite you to join me in leading change and driving positive impact in the area of diversity. So finally, in closing, I'd like to remind you that leadership takes courage, and courage is the fuel that drives change. Thank you for joining me on this edition of On the CQ.